It's March 20th, so this must be the next installment of the Go Loco podcast.
Go loco with us, go loco with adventure, your unofficial cast to all things local guides. Yeah!
Kimberly Ann Graham here with episode number 6. If you're a longtime listener, you've already listened to the first 5 episodes and loved them so much, you are now a subscriber everywhere. We are available on Google Podcasts, iTunes, and of course here on Anchor. Why not subscribe to them all so you never miss a beat? Listening on Anchor has the added advantage of allowing you to clap during the show and leave us messages. Just keep in mind that messages longer than a minute will cut off. Got something that you need more time for? Record it using a voice recorder on your smartphone. Then email it to us at golocopodcast@gmail.com. We would love to be able to use any messages you send in future episodes. So go ahead, give us your feedback or ask a question. We're listening. If you've never listened before, welcome to my episode. We are a group of crazy local guides that love talking to and highlighting the amazing ways in which local guides are out there trying to make the world better using Google Maps. The team consists of Adrian, Vandana, Shirley, Pedi, and Lenia. Yep, Adrian is in a whole lot of trouble surrounded by so many smart ladies. We're a fun bunch, and we're also unofficial, so the views represented here are our own. So today, you're going to be hearing my recorded interview with Mr. Paul Pavlinovich. Not only is he a fabulous photographer and 3-time Local Guides Connect Live attendee, he's also a Connect Moderator, an avid Lego collector and builder. Most importantly, he is also a good friend. I can't tell you all the fun things that we have done when he's been in town for Local Guides events. Photo walks and bike rides across the Golden Gate Bridge, all kinds of crazy things. In 2017, while I was on a cruise to Australia and New Zealand, Paul made certain I got a good look at good old Melbourne. The cruise ship was delayed due to rough seas, and our tour of the city was canceled. Once we finally reached port, Paul and another local guide, Anya, met me at the tram station near the docks, and the two of them spent the evening showing off what a great place Melbourne is. I truly would have missed out on one of my favorite cities in Australia, were it not for them. Paul is always planning something cool for local guides, in not just his home area, but on a world stage. Let's see what he's been up to and what he's got planned for 2019.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Greetings from California.
Sunny San Jose.
Well, it's sunny here, but that doesn't mean that it's warm. It is still wintertime, so, it's like 52 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that translates to, but for us, that's cold.
52 would be mid-20s in Celsius, I think, from memory.
There you go. That sounds really
So it's
cool.
about the same temperature here.
Really? And you guys are...
We're in summer. This is traditionally the hottest time of the year for us, and it's just being weird this year.
So is that a good thing then, that it's cooler, or?
It means the place where I live isn't on fire, which is awesome.
Oh, that's definitely awesome. Californian, I can appreciate your home not being on fire, because that's something we have a problem with.
I can appreciate it too.
But hey, we're here to have a little chat on this podcast thing that I have been a part of. So welcome to the Go Loco podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Good to take part in this. It's a really excellent idea.
Have you had a chance to listen? I know you've called in and commented on a few of these.
I have. I've listened to them all, and there's an episode about to be released, so I'll grab that and listen to that on the way to work.
One of the big news items that just came out this week is that Connect Live 2019 has been announced, and the application's open on March 4th. We should probably talk about some tips for people that are planning on submitting an application. Being that the two of us have done this 3 times before, we might have some ideas for success, or not. What do you got?
The first tip I'd have for applying for Connect Live is just be you. Talk about the kinds of things that you like and the things that you're interested in and why you like being a local guide. And that's about it. There's no great secret.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And every time anyone asks me, I tell them the same thing. Just be yourself. Be who you are. That way they choose you for the right reasons.
Yeah, definitely. You might think about ways that you could contribute, and you could talk about that in your video, but you've only got a minute. And when you start recording that video, you'll be amazed how quickly a minute disappears.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's always my struggle, is to try to keep it as close to a minute as possible.
And I know lots of people go to a big effort and make a big production and spend 5 days doing their video. I do my video in 1 minute. I do it once. That's it. Because that's really all you need.
That's me too. I mean, if they don't know me by now, I think we have the luxury of that they do know us. So I think for other people, you got to find a way to get what's relevant about you into that 1 minute. And it is really difficult. You want them to know who you are in that 1 minute, though.
Yeah, definitely. And if you don't know what to talk about, there's some prompts on the Connect Live website.
Yeah.
They're suggesting that you tell us about your favourite place and why you like it.
Yeah, I wish they'd have given us those kind of tips. My application videos probably would be better. We never had any guidance. You just had to fly. So.
Yep. And if you want other ideas, just Google them, because there's literally thousands of them on YouTube.
Yeah.
You might want to look at people that actually got in, so you can figure that out from Connect by hunting around on Connect and looking for their videos there. And that'll give you some ideas of how to make a video for yourself.
Yeah. Now, they've added a few extra steps this year, like they want you to create a brand new list.
I've got lists because when people come to Melbourne, I share a list with them. When I'm planning a photographic trip, I usually make a list because it's easy. I often use them when I see things that I want to put in photo walks, and I'll start with a list before I progress onto a mind map. Because lists are great, but the only thing you can't do is add routes to them, which is kind of necessary for a walk.
Yes, that can be very helpful. And I do remember your map for the 36 walks we did in San Francisco during last year's Connect Live. That was pretty awesome. And I have poached a number of your places from that list for my own lists.
Yeah. Well, you remember that walk. If there was a way to make people go up steep hills, I found it.
Hey, you had us running up steep hills. Because we
I didn't
could.
make people run. They just did.
Yeah, that was the most fun. That truly was a great walk, and it was unhurried. And well, we didn't hurry. Maybe we should have, but you were very patient with us and let us take our time, because there's a million things to take photos of. That was a really fun time. All meetups should be like that.
Yeah, I think the unhurried walks are the best ones.
Yeah.
So if, as a walk leader, if you get really anal retentive and try and push people along all the time, that's what they're going to remember.
Yeah.
But if you give people some time, but you do need to put some constraints on it, otherwise you'll go for days, but just let people meander and do their thing.
Yeah.
They'll have fun. I have a couple of other observations of photo walks and geo walks and the like. Generally, in about the first 5 minutes, you lose half the people. Some of them will reappear and some of them won't. But it's just what happens, and you don't need to worry about that too much, because they've just found some shiny thing and they're off settling their own interests and they're having fun.
Well, and that's where the list is absolutely awesome, because they can always catch up with you because they have that list and they know where you're going.
It does assume that they're clever enough to actually use it, but yeah. Most people figure it out.
Well, this is a learning experience for them. They will learn. One of the sessions in last year's Connect Live was around lists, and it was so much fun for me when they brought up a sample list from San Francisco, and I don't think they realized that it was my list. And one of the things that made them bring it up, I think, is that I chose a very humorous name for that list. And that was one of the things that we talked about. So when you create your list, get creative with the name as well. That way, when people are looking for lists and they see yours, the creative name sometimes is enough to pull them right in. So make this list like you're going to hand it out to everybody that visits you. Don't just make it for the application. Make it something that people can get a lot of use out of, because I'm going to save them. And that way, when I finally make it to wherever it is you're from, I'll have your list.
Yeah, definitely. And when you're creating your lists, it's good to make them sound fun, or sound interesting, or at least descriptive of where they are. So I've got a Melbourne list, for example, which I give to visitors that come here, and it's just called Paul's Melbourne list, but does the job.
Then you can take that list and break it down a little further, and Paul's coffee crawl in Melbourne or pizza in Melbourne.
There's actually not a lot of coffee places on my list. It was interesting because there's a Googler, Jesselyn, who's coming to Melbourne soon, and she commented that she was looking for coffee places in my list and she only found one, but it just happened to be the one that she loves the most in Melbourne. So how cool's that?
That is very cool.
So one of these days, I'll make a coffee list for Melbourne, but the challenge is that those places come and go so often, and I don't live or work in the city itself. So if I put out a list, 2 weeks after I put it out, half the places on it won't be there again.
That kind of a little bit of a damper on the fun for a list. I think we've kind of wandered over the line into the 36 walk by talking about these lists and our previous walks. Maybe we should start talking about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So the 36 walk concept goes back a few years now. Originally it was just a Melbourne thing. There was a local guides community in Melbourne, and there was also a Melbourne photographers community, and the members had a really strong crossover. And one of the things that I noticed when I was looking at maps, it was early days for photos. There were lots of people snapping quick ones on their phones, and they weren't really thinking about the images, so the image quality wasn't brilliant. There's still a lot of that today where images aren't great. So the idea of the 36 walk is to introduce some constraint and get people to think about their images. So you're only allowed to take 36 images during the photo walk. That 36 comes from the old film days where the most common film size was 36 shots. And the idea is it forces you to consider things a little bit. You start thinking about your photo composition, you start thinking about images that make you feel something. You start thinking about images that are maybe a bit more expressive than one that you've just snapped. And once you start getting there, you'll start contributing better images onto maps as well. So it's a journey. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. A single photo walk is not going to turn someone into a brilliant photographer, but it just starts the path of thinking. And they'll start thinking about texture and colour and shapes and how people fit into those shapes. And generally you just start making nicer images.
I 100% agree on that. It's difficult for me to limit myself to 36 photos, but I think the way I'm going to do my walk in San Francisco, which we're going to do ours in May.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
We have so much going on in March and April, and we still want to participate.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you said it's okay to go ahead and do it the first weekend in May, so we're going to do ours then. And I would recommend
go for it.
Anybody else that can't do it on the 23rd or the weekends around there should think about doing the same thing, because it is about learning. And what I want to do with mine is try to limit my photos. It's very difficult for me, though. But when it comes to a recap, I'm going to have to trim it down. So I think picking out the photos that I feel fit into a collection of 36 will teach me a lot in itself as well.
Yeah, that would definitely help. And people who are thinking of creating a walk, don't worry about whether people are going to come or not, or people are going to find your walk interesting. There's nothing wrong with just bringing a few of your friends and going out for a walk, because you'll achieve the same thing. You'll achieve the purpose. And the other cool thing is you'll do your first meetup. So once you've done one, the next one's a bit easier. The one after that's a bit easier. The one after that's a bit easier. And you start this train, and you just, meetups are fun, and you just get used to organising them, and off you go. I've actually lost count of how many I've done.
Yeah, no, when people ask me for any kind of tips on doing a meetup, I always tell them, do something that you want to do, because if no one else shows up, you're still having fun. And that's the most important thing. The person that puts all the work in should enjoy what they're doing.
I suppose that the only other tip I'd give for meetups, and it applies to the 36 walk, but it applies to lots of other things as well, don't put much of your own money into it. So maybe you might put in a little bit if you want to make some stickers or some flyers or something like that, but don't go overboard. I have heard of people who spend a lot of money on a walk. The challenge that when that happens is you're essentially buying friends, and when that money dries up, so do they disappear. So I think we've all learnt that from the early days of when Google got involved in our walks. We'd get hundreds of people coming along to them, and we'd hand out t-shirts and all sorts of things, and everybody was happy. And then one day that stopped, because it can't go on forever. It's not economic to go on forever. Now that that's dried up, it's made it much, much harder to actually get people to come to a meetup, because they go, Why would I do that? I can't get anything out of it. And that they've lost the point of the meetup. And the point of the meetup is to get together socially and share something that you like doing together. Yeah.
Exactly. It's just about having fun, people. Okay, well, let's talk about some of the other things that you do, because you have some very, very interesting hobbies. And some of them are on display with the banner for this podcast. You are probably the only photographer I follow on Instagram that regularly submits photos of Lego minifigurines, along with other toys, but I particularly like the Legos.
That was actually a local Melbourne photographer who got me back into it. I'd done it a long time ago, but it sort of fell by the wayside. His name's Tony Tulloch. He's also a local guide. He's also in the Melbourne photographer community, and a couple of years ago he tried to organise a global toy photography walk. And I think we ended up with about 5 places in that walk, and I went along to that one because I love going to other people's walks, partly because I don't have to organise it, but partly because I get to see different ideas and I get to see the way that other people do things, and that then enriches the ones that I do next. And he brought along these little dinosaurs and some little Lego figures and a bunch of other things, and everybody gravitated toward the Lego figures because you can get Lego figures into scenes that might remind you of something, or that you might have seen somewhere, or that you might just want to set up. So as a photographer, one of the really hard things is getting people to do what you want them to do. Lego figures, they'll do anything you want.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yep. There's thousands and thousands of people around the world who are doing it, and if you get onto something like Instagram or the other socials, and Legostagram is one of the hashtags, Lego minifigure is a hashtag, toy photography, and another one's mock, M-O-C. Mock is my own creation, and you can build Lego with the kit, you can follow the instructions, and while those kits can be quite challenging, and some of them, especially when you get into the creator kits and the expert kits and the techniques kits, they're really actually quite hard and they can take hours, if not days, to make. The mocks are things where you look at this pile of things and you imagine it into something and then you build it. And those ones are where an extra element of creativity comes into it. So things like taking the TARDIS kit that came with the Doctor Who series out, it came out about a year ago, and putting the workman's toilet, the Portaloo, inside the TARDIS. So you probably, I don't know if you've seen those photos on Instagram, I'm not sure if I've shared them yet, but they're kind of funny. And they just make something that's a bit unexpected. This TARDIS opens up and there's a toilet inside it.
Which makes the most sense to me. Not having watched much Doctor Who, that's what I'd expect to find in there. But a Doctor Who fan would definitely not.
Well, I'm sure there is one in there.
No. Well, I should hope so. But he is a Time Lord.
But he's got companions.
This is true, and they are not Time Lords, so they have needs.
Yeah, so the mock concept runs from little tiny things like that to massive things. The Melbourne Lego Users Group recently ran a thing they call Brickvention, which had about 15,000 people go to it. And at those things, there were 2 Rube Goldberg machines. So I don't know if you know that concept. I'm guessing, yes, you do know that concept.
I'm
These people had made them out of
familiar.
Lego. So one was a 17-year-old kid, and he's made this massive machine out of Lego that was, all it was doing was taking little balls from one end of a table to another one and then driving them back on a train. But all of the different steps that he had in there to make this happen, and the timing that he's gone to keep these things synchronized, that you can build that in Lego, that's just amazing.
Yeah. Now, my kids used to, my youngest daughter used to compete in the Mindstorm robotics competitions, and they do some really interesting building with Legos to compete in that. It's for the elementary school kids, and then it progresses, and when they get older, they're building full-on robots and competing in FIRST robotics competitions. So, playing with Legos will take you places.
And guess what happens just after that? You start playing with things like augmented reality. You start playing with things like machine learning. And where does that take you? You start to work for Google.
Or Facebook, or any of them. They're all working on that stuff now. So
they're all getting into it.
These are skills that we should all be pushing our kids to
Yeah.
to pick up on. And they can have fun doing it.
I'm just going to pause for a moment because Munchkin over here is getting very noisy and he needs to shut up.
Go ahead.
Oi, Alex. Stop moving around and hammering your keyboard like a maniac. His chair's noisy every time he moves. Yeah, but my voice recorder will. And that'll drive Adrian nuts.
It will. Or Pedi. Chili's the one that's doing the editing, I think. Unless I'm going to try to do it, but
It's not easy to do if you do it on a phone. If you do it on a computer, it's not too bad.
I have a friend who works at Apple, and I asked him what he knows about audio editing, and he told me everything. He plays in a band, and he's all about sound. That's his area at Apple. So he's going to help me with it. We'll see. I might be a hopeless case. I might have to turn it over to Pedi. We'll see. I'm going to try. I'm just the talent here. I'm not the tech.
We should include this bit. People are going to want to know how podcasts are made.
Exactly. You know, I'm not a fan of it, for me anyway. For other people, following a script, it sounds so lovely and organized, but I don't think I'm good at that. I think I'm better at just having a chat with my friend Paul here, and we'll record it.
Yeah, if I follow a script, I start sounding like a robot.
Exactly. We just don't sound like real people, and I want to sound like me, so with all the pros and the cons, you get the whole package. So let's see, what else? The Puffing Billy Railway. You know, this is something I've seen a number of photos from you on, but I don't really know that much about it. You want to tell us a little bit about that? It definitely seems like a passion in your life.
Yeah, it definitely is. The railway's a steam railway. It's one of the last ones in Australia that operates. It runs every day, so it's a bit unusual. It's not like most tourist operations. It manages to keep going all year. It's not a really long trip. It's 18 miles in your language, 26 kilometres in mine. It runs from a town called Belgrave to another town called Jambrook, and it happens to run through the town that I live in the middle of the line called Emerald. So the only downside of working on the railway, I suppose, is I see my house twice. Some days on those really hot days, it'd be lovely to just get off and have a beer, but we can't do that because you're not allowed to.
Frowned upon.
Yeah, so I've done a whole series of different roles on that railway, but these days what I do is a track inspection, and that's done before the trains run. We do it every day, but I only do it once or twice a month, even though it looks like more in my photos. And you're just out to make sure that maybe there's trees down on the line. We get the occasional vandalism where people do things to the track, or it's just wearing out in places, and you need to make sure that it's safe for that day's running. Most of the rail is over 100 years old, so we have to look after it. Yeah, so it's a big thing. It's lots of fun. Probably the best thing about doing that track inspection is you leave at about 6 o'clock in the morning and it is really quiet. There's no one around, there's no one awake, and there's so much wildlife that's in the forest where I live, because I live in a place called the Dandenong Ranges, and it's a forested mountain range, but there's a whole lot of towns stuck in the trees. And from the railway you catch glimpses of houses. You don't see that many of them. And there's a lot of wildlife that you normally don't ever even realise is around. There's kangaroos and wallabies, you see snakes, echidnas, and of course drop bears. They're all over the place.
So for anybody out there that doesn't understand what a drop bear is, and Paul's screen name is Drop Bear, that is what they call koalas. Why is it they call them drop bears? You've explained it to me, but let you explain it to people.
Drop bears, I suppose, are something that's kind of made up for tourism. I probably shouldn't let that secret out. We tell everybody that they're really an angry version of the koala. Now, koalas themselves are really cute and cuddly, but you can't actually cuddle them. You probably see people on video sometimes having a go at it, and they usually come out of it with big scratches because they are wild animals, and they're not a bear, even though they're called a koala bear, but they have a lot of traits in common. So they've got big claws, and I've never known one to bite. They do often sit up in trees and throw things at you, so they'll pull things off the tree and throw them at you when they're trying to get rid of you. And they growl too. And if you hear one of their growls in the middle of the night and you don't know where it's come from, it's actually pretty impressive.
Oh, wow. This I did not know. So it doesn't have anything to do with them dropping out of the trees. Why did I think they dropped out of the trees? Do they do that?
They certainly come out of trees. They don't normally jump.
Yeah.
They normally come down the
They're not
down
gonna
the trunk.
drop on you on the trail to get you.
No, that's just spiders.
Yeah, and that's another reason why I'm never going on a hike with you along the Puffing Billy Railway, because I'm sure they're out there in the morning, aren't they?
Sometimes you might find spider webs across the line. I'm riding in a track. I'm riding in a track machine. They're not going to get me.
Okay, I might ride in the track machine with you then, where it's safe. I want to see all the other stuff.
We do have plenty of wildlife. I think Australia has got the biggest collection of wildlife that can kill you, but they're not that likely to actually want to.
Yeah, they just want you to stay away, which I'm happy to do. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your work with 360 Street View, because you got right onto it after we came back from Connect Live, more so than anybody else that I noticed. You were making blue lines immediately, but I think you had actually done it before. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I've been in the Street View Trusted Photographer program, which is if you like, the commercial side of local guides. I actually still do it for fun. I don't charge when I do it, so I'm still fitting in the local guides into the universe. And I started a couple of years ago, but the blue lines are a new thing. So the way you used to have to do it is you'd take a whole series of individual 360 shots, because I had the older Theta and it couldn't do video, it could only do stills. Well, it couldn't do video that the Street View app understood anyway. And then you would sit in the app for hours because it was awful at it, and you'd join them all together to make a path. And it wasn't a lot of fun. And last year at Connect Live, they really surprised us. They gave us something awesome. Every one of us got a Theta V. And the cool thing about the Theta V camera is Theta and Google have collaborated together to make a special video mode, which is just for making blue lines in Street View. And it runs at 5 frames per second, and it's 5.4K. So it still chews up a lot of data. About a mile takes around about 1.9 to 2 gig of data. So it's still pretty hefty, but it's not like the 25 gig that it used to take. And that now processes automatically, so you go out and do a run wherever you want to do it. I did one yesterday in a new housing estate, so that those brand new streets will now have Street View. And all you have to do is you can use a car or a bike, you can even walk. I've done hiking trails where I've just walked along, and the camera and the Street View app are working together. They're building up this video. Later on, when you get home or to somewhere else that's got Wi-Fi, you can upload those video streams. And in the background, Google turns them into the blue lines. And those blue lines are made up of thousands of individual images that are all linked together. So they've taken the hard work out of it and made it a lot of fun and made it really, really simple to do. So it's a good thing to do for your community. It's a good thing to do for areas that don't have Street View. So up here in the Dandenong Ranges, for example, Google did what are called A roads. And they're the most travelled roads, and they're the ones that people go to. But they're also the ones that everybody knows where everything is in, so that's not that valuable. So I get onto what Google call B roads, which are the ones that they don't really care about because they think there's nothing on them. But the reality is there actually is. There's places that people are going. It might just be someone's house that they're trying to find, but it might also be businesses, and it might be attractions, because there's lots of wineries and things like that up here. And you can populate those out. And the cool thing is, after you've put that up there and the blue line's up there, you can take a cruise through it yourself on your computer, and you can find these businesses, and then you can add them all.
Haha! More points for you.
Yep.
So here's my question: when you're doing something like that on a B road, are you riding along on a bike, or are you walking, or how the heck are you? Because that sounds like a lot of area to cover. How are you doing it?
It's actually a bit of a mixture. Most commonly, I use my car, and I mount the camera up on the roof. So I used to poke it out through a sunroof with a selfie stick, but I can't do that anymore because I've changed cars and I don't have a sunroof anymore. So now I've got a magnetic mount that sits up on the roof of the car, and that produces quite acceptable results as long as you keep your speed down. So if you get over more than about 40 kilometres an hour, which is probably about 25 to 30 mile an hour, you start getting blur in the videos. And that leads to not so high quality imagery. And the challenge with not so high quality imagery is Google will probably reject it because they want a decent quality for maps. Other times where I'm using trails, I might be riding on a push bike, because I've got a mountain bike that I use, and on that one I mount the camera on my helmet. I have to thank, I think it was Alankovan who actually showed the first one of those, and I thought that's a really cool idea, so I made my own. And if I'm walking on a trail, because there's lots of trails that you can't ride a bike on, either because you're not allowed to or because it's just so rough you can't, those ones I walk, and I use a monopod, and I keep the thing pointing up past my shoulder, up past my ear, so I know that it's always straight because I can feel it that way. And you wear a hat so people can't see you.
Yeah, you don't want to be part of the show.
The Street View one's a really interesting one to do because it actually takes local guides back to where it started. Because I think you were in City Explorers.
I was.
When it first started up. And City Explorers didn't have points.
No, they didn't. But they had lots of events with free stuff, which is what sustained that program. So, yeah.
So the Street View blue lines, they don't have points. So you don't get anything from it apart from the joy of contributing and enriching your own local area. I believe they're working on that. They're thinking about how they can do it, but they don't want to just give you a point per image because you'd get 20,000 points every time you did a street run. And that's really not fair because it doesn't match up with the effort that other people are doing to put their photos up.
Now, I think having the ability to become a trusted photographer, and that means you can actually hire yourself out. There are people that I imagine would want to hire you for that, or they wouldn't have it work that way. So there is that advantage to doing a lot of work with Street View, taking those photos and getting that trusted Street View photographer. Like you said, you do it for fun. I do it for fun. But if you were looking to monetize, I suppose you could that direction. Hey, I don't know about you, but I could use a little break. Get up, stretch, shake everything out a little, maybe even get a little fresh air. This episode is a 2-part episode. You can listen to it right away, or you can come back in an hour or so, however it fits into your day. I promise you, it'll be worth it. Now let's go ahead and leave you with that catchy jingle written by our own Pedi. Sing along, I usually do.
Go